Okay, so external threats. These are the possibilities we might have. Alright, we might run into an energy cloud. And the energy cloud, let me see if I can get this under my chin here. There we go. The energy cloud has 0 shield points on turns when it's hit by the pulse cannon. That's the cannon at the very bottom level of the ship, bottom center. Its X action is it drains all energy from all shields. Its Y action, it does attack 1 on every zone of the ship except the one that it's on. And then the Z action is it does attack 2 on the other 2 zones. We might run into a space jellyfish, which can't be targeted by rockets, and it heals itself. And all of these will have the amount of damage that you need to take care of the threat, and they'll have a shield level. And the shield level is basically how many points of damage it absorbs every turn. And that's why you really need to coordinate your attacks. Because if I'm firing on, let's say, the red zone heavy cannon, that deals 4 damage to whatever's on the red trajectory. If this had, well, let's find one that has a good amount of shields. So this kamikaze here has 2 shields. If I deal 4 damage to it in a single turn, the first 2 are absorbed by the shields, which means I'm actually dealing 2 damage to it. So I would need to hit it 3 times to get its total of 5 damage. Well, that's not going to cut it, because the kamikaze moves 4 spaces on the trajectory. That's that number on the left there. 4 spaces on the trajectory every turn. So if it's on the red trajectory, or the white trajectory, the really short one, that's only got 3... I think that's got 10 total spaces on it. So this guy moves 3 times, and he's already hit the ship. And when he hits the ship, he deals an attack of 6. Each zone of the ship can only take 6 damage before it's destroyed. So he will have single-handedly nearly wiped out one zone of the ship. And let's see, we've also got a fighter, which is just sort of your bog standard attacker. I wanted at least one of those in there. And we've got an asteroid, which is very much like the kamikaze. It just goes straight for the ship. It has no shields, and if it's not destroyed by the time it hits the ship, it deals a lot of damage. We've also got serious threats, and the serious threats are things like a Leviathan tanker. When it gets destroyed, it deals damage to all of the other things, but it has really heavy shields and it repairs damage to itself. We've got a Nebula Crab, which has really strong shields when it's far away, but as it gets closer, I guess it sort of lifts up its claws and exposes its underbelly to you, and you can damage it more. And if it gets to your ship, it does like a pincher attack, attacks 5 on both the red and the blue zone, both of the sides of your ship, the lateral sides. The pulse satellite just damages all zones simultaneously, no matter where it is. And the dreaded interstellar octopus, which will, if you get it angry, will start attacking you. But if you haven't attacked it yet, it's sort of just peaceful. Our internal threats are things like saboteurs, which, they'll start out in the white zone. When he hits the X action, he moves to the right. When he hits the Y action, he takes 1 energy from that reactor, which will be the blue zone reactor, if possible. And if there's no energy in that reactor, he deals 1 damage. Then when he hits his Z action, he deals 2 damage to that zone of the ship. We have 2 possible saboteurs, they going in either direction. We can get hacked shields, where all of the energy drains from the shields, and then the shields sort of damage the ship. And when things like this happen, basically we have to repair the problem by hitting the B button as fast and furiously as possible. Hacked shields. unstable warheads where the rockets will explode if they haven't been launched already. Overheated reactor where the reactor itself will explode, and when you try to repair it, whoever's standing at the lateral reactors will take damage because it sort of flares. And there are serious threats for the internal as well. We can have a nuclear device where everybody has to press the button in different parts of the ship at the same time. Actually, it's all at the same part of the ship, so everybody has to go to the central reactor and hit the C button simultaneously, or it will blow up. And this one, if it gets to the Z action, it just destroys the ship. You can't survive it. The fissure, where we have to launch our interceptors to repair this fissure in the hull. And again, if it gets to the Z action, the ship breaks apart. And we have crossed wires, where energy leaks out, which basically means the first X action is the central reactor's energy is transferred to that shield. Excess leaks out, which means normally when you transfer energy to a shield, you fill up to its capacity, and whatever energy is left over stays in the reactor. When this happens, whatever energy is left over gets used up and becomes damage. So none of those are good things to be dealing with. And I don't quite know what out of those we're going to come across, but let me tell you, it's not going to be anything good. One last thing. If I do take damage, I get one of these. And these are damage tokens, and they're randomly just shuffled together. And what they do is they affect a part of the ship for the zone that took damage. So let's say the red zone took damage. It covers up this heavy cannon in the red zone. So instead of dealing 4 damage per shot, the heavy cannon is suddenly dealing 3 damage. Now, I don't get to look at these and see how they're shuffled while the mission's going on. So if I know for a fact that a zone of the ship is taking damage, I don't know what that damage is doing. So I'm going to have to overcompensate for that. But I think that's all the explanation you need. Oh, one more thing. I guess I'll sit down again. So one last thing is there's a couple of commands that aren't used in the solo game. Thank God, because otherwise it would be way too crazy. And those have to do with transferring data. There's one computer command that's like transferring data, one that's like uploading or downloading, and those have to do with drawing cards. In the cooperative game, the players each have a hand of cards. And so you might not be able to do the action you want to do. You might want to move left, but you don't have any cards to move left. And there will be certain times during the soundtrack where it'll allow you to do a data transfer and pass cards between the players. But you have to plan ahead of time, because the data transfer happens within like 5 seconds. So if it says data transfer in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, data transfer complete, by the time it says data transfer complete, you have to have passed your card. It requires a lot of communication. There's also things where the communication systems will go down and just static will come on the soundtrack. And in the multiplayer game, in the cooperative game, that means you can't talk for that section. It's like I said, you need to coordinate your actions so much. That is a big handicap. In the single-player game, it doesn't really affect you, but I'm going to try and participate and just not talk to you, the camera, for those sections. And finally, there's unconfirmed report. An unconfirmed report is only used in the 5-player game. And it's basically to balance out the difficulty. If you're playing with 5 players, you have a few extra threats that come in. They're unconfirmed reports because they may or may not actually happen, depending on how many players you have. So that is the game. And I think I've pretty much covered it all, so let's just get into the mission. Are you ready, Space Cowboys?